Hello, everyone, and welcome to DAWG DAZE, where we talk about all things cannabis. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Holly B, and today we have Dr. Louis Frosch with us, who is going to tell us about his new book that is just hitting the presses, hot off the presses. The ink is hardly even dry on it. How are you doing today, Doctor?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, welcome, welcome. So we were talking, chit-chatting a little bit before the show started here, and if we start at the beginnings, you were a Marine, Semper Fi.
Yes, that was right out of high school. Didn't think I had many options, but that one I went for. And, my military career didn't quite go the way I thought it was. I ended up, I was an infantry Marine, 0311 rifleman, ready for deployment right before September 11th. And I developed a heart condition, ended up having heart surgery.
Oh my god.
That was my ticket out at that point. So I got out and joined the workforce.
Well, and join the workforce you did. You started a very successful career as a doctor.
Yeah, I ran heavy equipment for a while. I was a carpenter for a while. I've done a bunch of stuff before I ever even went to med school. So I took the road less traveled and don't regret it.
Absolutely. Every little bit kind of shapes us into the people we are today, right?
Absolutely.
So what's going on? I was a little embarrassed. I do not know what an osteopathic physician is,
Uh,
and I want you to dig in deep and explain that big word to me, please.
so I didn't think I was going to get put on the spot. All the other DOs that see this are going to be like, oh, you don't remember all your history. Um, DOs and MDs, doctorate of osteopathy versus medical doctor. Those are the two practicing physicians in the country. The medical education is very similar, same timeline, right? Everybody's got to get the same credentials, getting in, getting out. Um, our national standardized exams are very similar. Um, the ideology, the basic foundation of osteopathic medicine is, a little more of a holistic approach, starting with the foundation, right? Osteo being bone. Everybody's like, is that like chiropractor? Yes and no. Yes, that's what osteo is, right? But we do a lot of hands-on work, very heavy on anatomy, very system-based, and everything ties together in osteopathic medicine, and that's why I was drawn to that. So that was my goal, was to get into a DO school, and yeah, glad I did. Nothing against MDs. They're great MDs, great DOs, right? That's the way
Right.
the world goes. So, but yeah, we're all over the place. When you start looking at the letters after the doctor, you'll start seeing DO all the time now,
I This is the perfect kind of doctor to get into cannabis and
right?
to be a cannabis consultant because I'm a firm believer in the holistic approach to cannabis and cannabis use. So, what got you into cannabis consulting? So, it was the holistic aspect of the osteopathic field that you chose?
No, I gotta say it's just my whole life and my experience with marijuana since I was 11 years old. Since I was a kid. I know my dad before I came along was into you know different movement of different drugs, down in Miami, Florida, obviously. But once I came along, things were a little different. But growing up in Florida, like everybody else, everybody's around marijuana. And yeah, I got into it more than most, but from a pretty young age. And then joining the military, getting away from it, working, life as usual. But coming out of medical school, I went to med school out in Colorado. So
No.
I got my, first experience with the medical side of it out there, and realized there are people that are going to use this and people that are going to abuse this. And
Hmm.
I, I, I never liked the medical versus recreational, right? It kind of forces you to either have fun with it or you follow the rules, and it's just hard to make it work that way. So, but here in Florida, we have a medical marijuana program, so we got to stick to the rules. But coming out of residency was right when the program was starting here in Florida, and I followed it every step of the way, and just knew that I had a bit of a leg up on the knowledge base to get started. So I really see a deficit in that area. That's where the medical side seems to kind of stick to the old rules that we're trying to get away from.
Right. I think it's great that a doctor is embracing cannabis as a therapy, um, because there are so many doctors and some nurses, but a lot of nurses are seem to be a lot more receptive to cannabis as a therapy. So it's refreshing, and I'm so happy to see a doctor really embracing cannabis as a therapy. So what is your kind of your theory, or the what all do prescribe? Do you do the prescribing of medical cannabis there in Florida?
Yeah, we the the law says we have to call it recommending and not prescribing, right? That
Oh,
overlaps certain legal aspects of a licensed physician versus the medical marijuana world, kind of quarantined, and we use certain words like recommend. So
oh, interesting.
yeah, we're here to assess a patient and make sure they're safe to go and use marijuana, and we recommend that they go to the dispensary and try any and all of the products available. Um, Different doctors take different levels of fine tuning that and giving specific recommendations. But many of the physicians don't really have any background or experience in it themselves. So it becomes, something that just gets pushed onto the dispensary. And again, there's just some antiquated advice out there that we're trying to get away from. So,
Exactly. So you are a, do you think that do you kind of embrace the idea that cannabis is not a fix all for everything, doctor?
no, and I'm very clear about that in the clinic that marijuana doesn't fix anything. And I kind of set myself apart from the Western medicine. It's become kind of a sick care, disease management. We treat symptoms. Um, we if we're going to treat medical marijuana like the redheaded stepchild of medicine, well, people come in and I say, all right, well, buckle up, Buttercup. Um, if this is the last resort, well, the hammer's in your hand. You can beat yourself over the head, or you can build a better life. Marijuana doesn't fix anything. It can change your awareness, but we need to use this as a tool, not a ticket to escape from reality. Like that's going to fix our problems, right? Um, so responsibility, right? I'm trying to push accountability back into healthcare. So I say, welcome to healthcare. Here's your hammer.
Yeah. Ooh, good. So, do you guys work as a do you work as a team doctor? Do you have like mental health people that you kind of work cannabis into? Like, okay, so you have anxiety. Here's also a mental health specialist that I would like to work with, and we'll kind of keep on the same sheet of music as you go and work with this holistic medical team. Do you work that way, or how do you work, doctor?
Well, outside of, in the medical world of medical health communities, that do incorporate all of this, you start talking about, well, what access do I have to a good psychologist or therapist, and it's what insurance do you have, and it's everybody knows exactly how that works, and depends on what town you're in, and so, but medical marijuana, we're over on the sidelines. There isn't really much communication. We do get medical records, to you know support diagnoses in the clinic, but um, there's not much communication. Most of my patients would say, I'm their therapist and medical marijuana doctor and et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be that jack of all trades. And that's kind of why I became a family physician in the first place. So I do have a well-rounded, tool bag.
So, as a family doctor, you take care of the mom, the dad, the kids. Make sure they get their checkups and their sports um,
Well,
checkups and that kind of stuff. Am I tracking?
that perfectly. If I was filling that role as a family doctor, which I am not, I do medical marijuana. I do a little bit of
Oh,
insulin resistance, fasting, nutrition, exercise, a little bit of longevity work, but
nice.
selective. That's kind of what my base education was in. I started out in nutrition, then got into neuroscience and studied the aging brain.
Oh,
So
wow. You're
I,
a one-stop shop.
I love all that stuff. I'll talk for days about that stuff, but no, the bulk of my time is spent seeing medical marijuana patients.
Fantastic. Thank you for that clarification because I definitely want to start steering people your way. If they're in Florida and are looking for a doctor that really can wear a lot of hats for you and steer you in the right directions. And which brings me to your book. And this is you call it a hand guide, or I have on the background here a topographical map, which you would know as a Marine Corps corpsman. And so this book is like a handbook. It's a map.
Yeah, exactly. I use that analogy often, and I'd say the cannabis industry is a little lost right now. They need a better map. Um,
Yes.
the plant has evolved. We have evolved the plant incredibly in the last 50, 60 years, and the directions have not been updated. And the commercialization of cannabis has just reinforced the old rules, and it seems to be getting a little worse. So we need a new map, and here it is. So it
And
this
I love the name of it. Common Sense Cannabis.
I can't think of a better
Short,
name.
sweet, boom.
Yeah, yeah. This was probably born out of me telling my patients over and over, as we get cut short in a 15-minute appointment,
Yeah.
20-minute appointment, that look, someday it'll all be in a book. I'm just going to get all this in a book. So this is basically a template of, you know, all the scenarios of approaches that I tackle in the clinic, wrapped up to in a little easy to read book. It's a practical guide.
Yeah, I like this. Stevia during the day, indica at night. Um, you so you that's the you kind of want to kind of expound on that a little bit more, right? In this book that
Yes,
um
yes. They're just simply the idea of sativa and indica. It's not what it used to be. Back in the up to the 70s, we were a sativa nation. Everything we had was actually grown at the equator. And
wow.
around Vietnam time, the hippie trail opened up over coming out of Europe, and the Hindu Kush mountains, and they started bringing indica seeds back, and they were growing it up in Northern California pretty successfully because the climate was similar.
Yeah.
Um, and that was when we started telling people, hey, you got this one that makes you feel sleepy, go use this one at night. And everything changed. And
Mm,
some will say, well, it seemed to work a little bit back when pot was 2, 3, 4, 5%. But I argue that indica never really did us right, especially at night.
hmm.
The idiot loser stoner problem came from, and that happened pretty quickly once indica was widely introduced into our country. And then once we realized you can cross the two of them and you can grow it everywhere, and the world of hybrids began, and
Mm,
never turned back. Even all through the Caribbean, Mexico, everything started to hybridize back in the 70s.
hmm.
So the sativa indica binary approach It just doesn't really even exist anymore. We have a spectrum of hybrids, and the menus we see in the dispensaries, even in states that are much more progressive and open, and it's not just a medical dispensary. Um, Anywhere these days, if you're somewhere that you can get a hold of a regulated strain of cannabis that's got a certificate of analysis, you've got more information right there at your fingertips. And I'm trying to get everybody on the same page as far as menus in the dispensary. So that's what I dig into the book, the history of it, where we are
Awesome.
now, and how we move forward.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. I really like this phrase right here: tolerance becomes a compass.
Yes. That kind of the idea of tolerance, we see it as something bad. We see it as, in the model of medicine that we've been inundated with. You take a pill for something, it hits one receptor. When that tolerance builds, you need more, and it's just a linear, you know, building up of that tolerance. And for some medications, it gets pretty out of control, and the dependency becomes pretty bad. Um, the idea of putting everything in a two buckets of indica sativa and telling people to use it night and day, it's that behavior that actually drives tolerance in a bad way into the two receptors that exist in the endocannabinoid system. And that's what's so important to understand, is that there are two receptors that cannabis manipulates. So we can use tolerance as it builds in the system one way or the other, right? These two receptors are in a network that directly balance each other out.
Mm-hmm.
So if we better understand the spectrum of hybrids and how they behave, and how we can basically push tolerance back and forth in the endocannabinoid system between these two receptors, we can start to actually manage the system better. And, um, you know, that's one level of complexity that, we have to introduce, getting away from, hey, it's just two types, two hammers, and during the day you use sativa to run away from your lethargy and your sadness, and it pushes your awareness out. And at night you go home and use indica to just run away from your mental and physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it, anybody who's been smoking indica since the 80s and 90s and 2000s knows, you do too much night after night and it starts to fail. You start waking up and you start bouncing back. So that's, like I said, one layer of complexity that I introduce in the book. The tolerance as a tool comes in the how we really start to push back and balance the system out. But it's based on the fact that there's two receptors.
Yeah. Excellent. I love that. What are your thoughts on synthetics?
Like all the synthetic THC and THC similar molecules. Is that what you're
Yeah, they're talking about they can make like designer drugs out of the synthetics.
Yeah, I am definitely not a fan of synthetic anything, first of all. But and I think just producing synthetic THC by itself hasn't really shown much benefit in a strictly medical standpoint. Marinol, the first, approved drug. The number of people over the years that I've met that have used Marinol and just said, I just didn't get anything out of it. Like whether they wanted to try and just get high or run away from their problems, or it actually helped them be more functional. I just never heard much good from that. Now, synthetic designers, I think in the world of pharmacology, there may someday be a way that we can get a little more, fine-tune approach as to which of these receptors we're modifying. And, that would be a positive way we can move if some type of, synthetic, I don't even like the word synthetic, or big pharma, but
I don't either.
there,
But I have to ask.
there are some amazing drugs out there that have saved so many lives, right? And I love drugs that function as tools.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not gonna take it and use it for good, then I'm not for it. But
yeah, absolutely, I'm in the same boat with you. I'm a whole plant girl. You got to get the whole,
yep,
full spectrum with the terpenes and all the goodies in it.
exactly. All the entourage effect, right?
Yes.
And that's where that fingerprint lives of what kind of hybrid are we talking about here, right? Every plant can produce all the terpenes that are out there, but some are a little more related to the indica-like feelings that we've all been so accustomed to. And then there are ones that are more associated with the sativa-like feelings that we've all been accustomed to. So we're never going to get away from these words, indica and sativa, and we shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
I don't ever want to give up those words. But indica dominant, sativa dominant, balanced, leaning, right? We have to start using these words. Some companies like to just talk about 60-40, 70-30, 80-20, just to represent that whole spectrum. But that's where menu confusion comes in, right? In my town, we have 15 dispensaries, and some have a menu that is mostly things called sativa and indica, and a few hybrids. And then we have one company that labels everything as a hybrid, and another that labels about 90% of things as hybrids, but they have labels like balanced hybrid, indica dominant hybrid, sativa dominant hybrid. Right? So
Ooh,
kind of
interesting.
that spectrum up. And how do we determine that? Well, every company's a little different as far as where they want to place everything, right? Not much should be called a sativa these days. Maybe some of those very heavy sativa dominant, traits that we find, not in the appearance of the plant. We all know that. That doesn't, tell us that much these days. But the terpene profile and how many terpenes, which terpenes and what relative ratios they're found in that plant, right? They're very fingerprints, and somewhere in these patterns is where the key lives to understand all the different spectrum of more indica dominant, more sativa dominant characteristics of all the different strains. So somewhere on a menu, right, we're not going to get rid of those words, but things are going to be more sativa like, indica like, or in my approach in looking at these receptors that are found in the brain and the body. And we know that the indica dominant strains have those heavy body relaxing, right, tendencies.
In the couch.
Indica, couch, right? Nobody ever forgets that. But what are most people using indica for, especially at night? Trying to get the brain to shut off.
Yeah.
And that's where you run away from your problems long enough and then back louder, right?
Yes.
So, but again, there's different layers of complexity we need to add to this binary approach.
Yes. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. So, Doctor, who is this book for? Who did you write this book for?
Well, it's a good question. I wanted it to be for anyone and everyone that wants to know a little more about cannabis, but mostly people that are using it and ready to use it. But any age, beginners to very experienced heavy smokers, can understand cannabis much better on a different level by reading this. Right? Now, some will say, the old model works if you barely use any of it and you take breaks and you use it intermittently, and yeah, but you're still restricting you're limiting your potential of what you can get out of this and the level of control that you feel, right? By saying, oh, you can still use it the old way if you don't use that much. You're still, what do you just kind of push until it doesn't work, and then you back off. No, this way people come back and say, I finally feel like I have control
Oh,
of
nice.
my feelings and my thoughts and my body, and it just feels different now. I feel like I'm in control, and that's
Yes.
extremely
Empower yourself.
yeah, yeah.
I love it. I love this. I love the concept of it. Breaking down stigmas and old ways of thoughts and bringing you into the modern cannabis scene. If you're interested in um, going that direction, definitely get this book. And where can we pick this up at? It is available in paperback and on Kindle.
Yes, through Amazon.
Through
And you can find it just searching on Amazon or going to my website, lewisfroschdo.com.
I love it. Doctor, this has been such a interesting interview. I could chat with you all afternoon, but
I could talk all day.
but what
So
I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go to and order the book and read it and have you back on. How does that sound?
absolutely, I'll be looking forward to it.
Is there anything else you would like to do a shout out to before we sign off?
Actually, yeah, you're talking about, sending people my way in Florida. I, was just thinking about the book, but I'll give a shout out to who I do the majority of my work with here in Florida, a company called DAWG.
Oh, yeah.
They have been great through the years. I've seen a lot of patients through their offices. So, docmj.com is where you can find me if you actually want to come see me as a medical marijuana doctor. There you go.
Oh yeah, I got your LinkedIn website up here. So
Yeah.
DocMJ.
And
And
there you go.
how would people get a hold of you? You hit the little message button here and we can get in touch with
Actually,
you.
no, that's the LinkedIn page we're looking at there, but
Yeah.
docmj.com.
Oh, okay. So they have an actual website. My
Yes,
bad.
absolutely. And the modern everyday internet user can find me from there pretty easily.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Until next time, folks, stay safe out there.
Thank you for having me.
Bye bye.